Hi and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anne-Sophie, I'm a knitter from Belgium, and I've recently become obsessed with lace knitting patterns, so I thought I'd share some of the ones I have saved with you today. Just in case anyone is wondering, I am wearing my camisole number 9 by My Favorite Things Knitwear, which I knit in the late summer and fall of 2022, and I used Knitting for Olive Merino in the color Dusty Moose. It's a very simple summer top with these folded stockinette edges, and it is one of my absolute favorites. I think the color is just a perfect neutral, and this top really works with anything in my wardrobe. I really think I should knit another one. Now that said, let's just hop right into it because I have a lot of patterns to get through. The first set of patterns that I want to discuss with you today all have a ripple stitch lace pattern, which I have become obsessed with since I knit a ripple stitch baby blanket for some of our friends who are expecting, and it was such a fun and easy, just wonderful introduction into lace knitting really, that I thought why not compile a set of patterns with a similar stitch in case anyone else is feeling like dipping their toes into lace, because I think these kinds of lace patterns are a really beginner friendly and easy way to get started with lace, or at least it was for me. So the first pattern I want to talk about is actually two patterns, and that is the LOUISA set, or the LOUISA top, and the LOUISA skirt by Maria's Verden. She is a Norwegian designer who used to do a lot of testing for big designers and now started putting out her own patterns, and I am in love with every single one of the things she puts out, and these patterns are no exception. So the LOUISA top and the LOUISA skirt are knit at a fingering weight with a suggested needle size of 3mm needles, and the suggested yarn is Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, which is a light fingering weight 100% silk yarn. I'm currently actually knitting this with Sunless Garn Tine, which I find is a cheaper and very nice substitute for that yarn. If you want to see that, stay tuned for my next knitting podcast. The suggested gauge is 24 stitches by 40 rows, and the sizes of the garment range from XXS to 4XL, which corresponds to a bust circumference ranging from 71 to 124 centimeters. As is the case with a lot of lace knitting patterns, this pattern is knit bottom up, and it has no decreases for the waist, which I usually do like my summer tops to have, but for example this one doesn't have it, and I do like having a more straight fit from time to time, and I think it suits this pattern perfectly as well, especially if you plan on combining it with the skirt. I think this would also be a very nice scrap yarn project, like if you have a lot of leftovers from fingering weight summer tops, you could use them to knit this garment, either the skirt or the top, because in the pattern she does inform you on how many grams of yarn you need for one lace repeat, or for one stripe if you're knitting it striped with multiple colors. Now the skirt is of course knit at the same gauge with 3mm needles, and the sizes also range from XXS to 4XL. This corresponds to measurements of 81 to 135 centimeters. I'm assuming those are hip measurements, but I'm not sure. I would love to knit this pattern, but it's not entirely sure to me whether it has decreases and how the decreases work and how it would fit. So I'm kind of waiting for other people to knit the skirt to figure out more about that. Or I could just kind of overcome my social anxiety and just ask the designer about the measurements and decreases, as I can't find any information about that right now. But I would like to have that before I buy the pattern and commit to something, because I think I have about 30 centimeters difference between my waist and my hips, or the widest part of my hips, so usually I have a hard time finding bottoms, and I'm kind of worried always with like knitting bottoms that I would need the waist of one size and the hips of another size, and I'd need to like finesse it and decrease or increase in some way, and usually I don't really feel like doing that, so I just skip knitting bottoms that I want to knit altogether. But yeah, I'll try to figure that out and get back to you because I should. What I like a lot about these patterns is that the waistband of the skirt is a stockinette folded edge, and that matches the details on the top perfectly, which look like double knitted edges and straps. And I think that just looks so cute and dainty and elegant and perfect for the summer or late spring. Now the next pattern with a ripple stitch design is by Pernille Larsen from Knitting for Olive, and that is the Barbroe top. There is also a Barbroe blouse. I talk about that in my latest knitting pattern overview, but I think the top is a tiny bit more summer suited. What I like about the design is that it is very bra friendly with thicker straps and a rounded square-ish neckline. It has a similar rounded line in the back, which comes up a tiny bit higher. For this pattern, of course, Knitting for Olive pure silk is also the recommended yarn, but you could knit this with any fingering weight yarn you find suitable to use for the summer, really. It is also knit on 3mm needles, and with those 3mm needles, you should intend to hit a gauge of 20 stitches by 40 rows. The sizes range from a teen size and an XS up to a 5XL. I forgot to say this about the LOUISA skirt and top. That pattern comes in English and Norwegian, and the Barbroe top comes in English, Danish, French, German, Norwegian, Spanish, and Swedish. Now, I'm usually not a fan of circular yokes. I don't really like knitting them up, and I'm also not the biggest fan of how they fit me, but my friend recently knit the Peacock cardigan by Le Knit or Lineholm Samse, and I found out that there is also a Peacock tee with the same circular lace yoke. It also has this beautiful ripple stitch, but not all over, so that might be a more beginner friendly or a less intimidating way to try out a lace ripple stitch if you want to. My friend let me know that the cardigan actually has so many different short rows and so many nice details in the pattern that really make the fit wonderful for a circular yoke. So I'm assuming that the Peacock tee will have similar instruments in place to make the circular yoke fit nicely, and it also really seems like it going off from the project pictures on Ravelry and the pattern pictures. I think if I ever were to knit a lace yoke, it would be this one. The suggested yarn for this pattern is Sunless Garn Line, which is a DK weight yarn, and the suggested gauge you are to hit with that is 20 stitches by 27 rows on 4mm needles. The tee has these wonderful 1x1 ribbed details, which I think look very cute and dainty juxtaposed to the ripple stitch lace pattern, and I also really like the length to which the sleeves are knit in the pattern pictures. The sizes of this pattern range from an extra small to an XXL, and this corresponds to finished tee measurements of 90 centimeters to 127 centimeters. This pattern also comes in a ton of languages, being English, Danish, French, German, Italian, Norwegian, and Swedish. The next pattern I want to discuss is a bit of a special case, or like an honorable mention. This pattern has actually not come out yet. It has only been teased by Solvara knitwear, and that is the Amelia blouse, which is a blouse that looks like it's knit in all over ripple stitch with long bell sleeves. I think you should be able to knit it unicolor, but I think it looks amazing with these multicolored stripes as well. At the start of my knitting journey, I actually wanted to learn to crochet this ripple stitch blouse by Wool and the Gang, and I feel like this Amelia blouse will actually be like the perfect knitted version of that one, so I won't need to hone my crochet skills and pull out the crochet hook if I ever want a garment like that. At one point I was actually considering to knit the blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear and finesse it to insert a ripple stitch, but then Solvara knitwear teased this project, and on Ravelry, underneath her project, it says that the pattern should be coming in April 2025, so I think she's probably still working on it. take all the time you want or need, but I am just hoping this pattern will be published in the future because I will hop straight on it and I would even dare to apply for the test knit. In the project notes, it says that it was knit on 3mm needles at a gauge of 32 stitches by 40 rows, and she used Knitting for Olive pure silk in 3 different colors for her project. The last ripple stitch lace pattern that I'd like to talk to you guys about is actually a cardigan, but since it's a lace cardigan, I do think it is late spring, summer appropriate, and that is the Jean Cardigan by Kolibri by Johanna. Like the Peacock Tee, this pattern is knit with the ripple stitch in one color, and I think it looks absolutely mesmerizing and ethereal. It is a V-neck cardigan with double knit button bands, twisted rib details, and then an all-over ripple stitch lace pattern. It suggests to use a lace yarn and a sport yarn held together to form a DK weight, and the suggested yarn is Mayo Garn Pearl Mohair held with Mayo Garn Extra Fine Merino. The suggested gauge to hit is 22 stitches by 34 rows on 4mm needles. The way the sizing is noted down is a bit confusing, but it looks like it comes in sizes XS up to 4XL. These sizes will make for finished bust circumferences ranging from 93 to 138 centimeters on the garment. The Jean Cardigan pattern comes in English and German. I am such a sucker for cute co-ord sets, and especially if they're knitted, and I would love to point your attention to the Helle Knitting Patterns by Hip Knit Shop. These are actually a bunch of knitting patterns that I have not found on Ravelry, but I have found on Instagram and on the Hip Knit Shop website. There is a long version of the Helle skirt, a short version of the Helle skirt. There is a Helle sweater, which looks like a long sleeve V-neck blouse. There is a Helle top, which is just a V-neck strappy top. And then there is a Helle dress, which is basically the dress version of the top. All of these patterns look absolutely ethereal, and the lace pattern on these looks so complicated, but so worth the effort, I think. So the Helle sweater sizes range from an XS up to a 3XL, and the suggested yarn is Cuddle Me Cotton, to be held on 4mm needles, so I'm assuming that's a DK weight gauge, with 17 stitches by 29 rows. These patterns come in Norwegian, French, English, Spanish, German, Swedish, Italian, and Danish. Another lace knitted set that I absolutely adore is the Seashell Set by Tine Rousing. These are knitting patterns that were designed for the Breeze collection by Isager in 2023. The suggested yarn is Isager Yarn Trio 2, and that is a fingering weight yarn. The patterns are knit up on 3.5mm needles at a gauge of 15 stitches by 30 rows. The pattern includes the description for both the top and the skirt, and the sizes range from S to XL, so not as inclusive as I would have hoped it to be. It has a wide top with wide shoulders, which flows down kind of A-line style to match the A-line skirt. Both of these patterns are all over lace knit with this triangular shell-ish looking stitch. I think it'll take me quite a while before I ever dare to touch a set like these, but I would love to dream that someday I'll have the courage to knit up a set in all over lace, because I think it would just look stunning and so ethereal, especially to wear on like a holiday, to go out to a restaurant or something. This seashell set, for example, would be like, or the Helle dress would be such a good beach cover up. Yeah, I'm just obsessed with these looks. To anyone who's ever knit up one of these, I applaud you. That is so impressive. I really hope I am able to do something like that one day. Now I'd like to discuss some more tops in lace knitted stitch patterns, one of them being the Iris tank top by avec Anna. This is a camisole with a V neck and a V in the back, and these beautiful straps that tie up at the top of your shoulder. The lace pattern has a V shape with yarn overs all over the top, and it just looks so elegant, so cute, and like a lot of fun to knit. It suggests to use avec Anna merino yarn, and that is a fingering weight yarn with which you are suggested to hit a gauge of 12 stitches by 24 rows on 3.5mm needles. The available sizes correspond to bust measurements ranging from 85 up to 165 centimeters. This pattern comes in English, French, and Spanish. A similar V-neck strappy camisole in all over lace is the Fleur Cami by Brianna Mason. The suggested yarn for this pattern is Siwek Linnea, which is also a fingering weight yarn, suggested to be held on 2.5mm needles to hit a gauge of 30 stitches by 40 rows. Both of these summer tops are knit bottom up. The Fleur Cami has 9 sizes ranging from an XS to a 5XL. This pattern comes in English only. I think both these camisoles have wonderful eyelet looking details in a very different way, and that just goes to show how a similar v-neck camisole can be made to look so different just based on the lace stitch one chooses to use. Now, a different style of camisole I wanted to discuss is the Poet Top by Sari Nordlund. Sari Nordlund has an entire repertoire of patterns with the Poet stitch pattern. I don't think that is a surprise to anyone because that stitch pattern is just so stunning. I chose to talk about this Poet Top today because that is the most summer appropriate one in her repertoire. It has a boat neck style neckline with then these just strappy ties at the top of the shoulders, and it is again all over lace. This pattern is knit top down, which seems to be an exception for lace knitted tops. The suggested yarn for the Poet Top is Ovi etc. Tussa silk, and that is also a fingering weight summer yarn. The suggested gauge is 25 stitches by 30 rows, and you are suggested to hit that with 3mm needles. The finished bust circumference of this pattern ranges from 80 to 155 centimeters, and this pattern comes in English only. Now onto some more blouses that I'd love to discuss. The first of these is the Darjeeling Blouse by Trust the Mojo. This is a short sleeve v-neck blouse with buttons all over the front. It is a partly stockinette with lace edges at the cuffs and the hem, and it is a saddle shoulder contiguous knit blouse. It looks absolutely stunning, and with the amount of stockinette, it seems like a very beginner friendly or approachable lace knitting pattern. The suggested yarn for this pattern is Concept by Katya Cotton Cashmere, and that is a sport weight yarn, suggested to be held on 3.5mm needles to hit a gauge of 22 stitches by 31 rows. The sizes range from an extra small to a 4XL, and this pattern is available in English and French. Trust the Mojo has a similar and equally lovely blouse pattern called the Sookie Blouse. This one is also knit at a sport weight on 3.5mm needles with a suggested gauge of 22 stitches by 31 rows. And the suggested yarn is again Concept by Katya Cotton Merino. The sizes again range from an XS to a 4XL, and this pattern is available in English and French. The sleeves seem to be a bit wider and come a bit lower, and the lace edge and the I-cord edge are detailed with this contrast color, which looks absolutely gorgeous. The lace sections look like they are twice or at least thrice the size of the lace sections in the Darjeeling blouse, so I think it would be a tad more challenging than the Darjeeling blouse for a beginner lace knitter, but still wonderful to start off your lace knitting journey, I think, because of the amount of stockinette that precedes the lace knitting. I don't know, both of these blouses just seem like wonderful opportunities to dip your toe into the lace knitting pattern world. Another blouse that has mostly stockinette and then some lace details is the Ophelia Blouse by Tamara Jordan. This blouse has a V-neck and buttons in the front as well. In contrast, the lace on this pattern runs along all of the edges of the pattern and not just the cuffs and the hem, which I think looks so fashionable, so dainty, and just absolutely ethereal. The buttons in the front are also quite few, which adds to the delicate look of the lace and just looks wonderful in my opinion. The suggested yarn for this pattern is Knitting for Olive Pure Silk, and that is a fingering weight again, suggested to be held on 2.75mm needles at a gauge of 24 stitches by 36 rows. The pattern is again top down and it sports a set-in sleeve. It looks like it has beautiful waist decreases, for which Tamara Jordan or Starcrossed Knits is known as a designer. I can absolutely see myself knitting this blouse in my future. Another blouse I'd want to discuss is more of a sweater, but that is the Violetta blouse by Base Design Norway. This pattern is not on Ravelry, only to be found online, and it also seems like it only comes in Norwegian, but I wanted to include it anyways because it just looks so pretty, so consider this another honorable mention. This pattern has a gauge of 21 stitches by 30 rows. It seems like this pattern is knit at a DK weight with 4mm needles at a gauge of 21 by 30 stitches and with a fingering weight merino and a mohair held together. I think that could easily be substitutable for a DK weight summer yarn if you wish to knit this as a summer garment, or just two fingering weight merinos or cottons held together to make this a bit more summer or late spring appropriate. Of course, if you're living in Scandinavia, I think you could knit this in the suggested yarn and it would still be summer appropriate for some of you. The sizes range from XXS up to 2XL. This corresponds to finished bust measurements ranging from 91 to 131 centimeters. This pattern is also knit bottom up. Now, because in my climate it is possible to wear cardigans and even sweaters in the summer, I will be including some cardigan patterns in my list now. The first one of these is the Som cardigan by Cookie the Knitter. This is an all-over, relatively simple but gorgeous lace stitch pattern, and it has beautiful 1x1 ribbed details and a button band. It has a bit of a balloon sleeve, which I think looks just darling on this pattern. It is again a mohair knit. It suggests to use Sandnesgarn tin silk mohair with 2 strands held together to get a DK weight on 4.5mm needles at a gauge of 18 by 28 rows. I think this is yet another pattern that could be made more summer proof for certain climates with a cotton held together or a DK weight summer yarn. For me, I think I would be able to knit this with a mohair for the late spring or the late summer, and I actually might this year. This pattern comes in 7 sizes with finished bust circumferences ranging from 100 to 167 centimeters, and the pattern is published in English and Korean. Another lace cardigan I am absolutely in love with is the Olive Cardigan V-neck by Knitting for Olive. They have several patterns in this olive knitting pattern, similar to the situation with Sari Nordlund's Poet line, and I love every single one of them, but I think the V-neck cardigan can be most late spring or summer appropriate. It has lace all over, a bit of a balloon sleeve, and what looks like a set-in shoulder construction. The hem and the cuffs are knit with 1x1 rib, and it has a double knit button band. This is a pattern by Pernille Larsen for Knitting for Olive, so of course the suggested yarn is Knitting for Olive. They suggest to hold Knitting for Olive merino with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair, but of course you could use any fingering held with a lace mohair or just a DK weight yarn to knit this pattern if you wish. The suggested needle size is 5.5mm needles, with which you should hit a gauge of 17 stitches by 24 rows in the lace stitch pattern. This pattern is knit top down and it comes in sizes XS up to 4XL. And the finished bust measurements corresponding to these sizes range from 96 to 144 centimeters. As with most Knitting for Olive patterns, this one comes in a lot of languages, namely English, Danish, French, German, Korean, Norwegian, Spanish, and Swedish. A crew neck lace cardigan that I really love as well is the Lyrebird cardigan by Marjana Kovaček. It sports a stunning bell sleeve, 1x1 rib on the crew neck, and a double knit button band. It has beautiful details. It looks like it's a relatively fitted drop shoulder cardigan, and it suggests to use the Louis and Lola yarns Suri silk lace held with their SRS merino alpaca fingering. So a fingering and a lace held together to form a DK weight gauge. That DK weight gauge is suggested to be hit on 4.5mm needles to be 20 stitches by 30 rows. This pattern comes in 8 sizes, ranging from 86 to 160 centimeters. The pattern comes in English and Polish. Now, I would like to get into a few lace pattern sweaters, if that's okay with you. The first of these is the Pierre sweater by Kolibri by Johanna again. This sweater has twisted rib details and this all-over peacock-like V-shaped, stunning, scallopy, pointy lace that I am just obsessed with. It is an absolutely stunning crew neck lace drop shoulder sweater. The pattern is knit top down and it suggests to use Knitting for Olive merino held with Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair. So again, a fingering weight held with a lace weight mohair to reach a DK weight gauge. The suggested needle size is 3.5mm needles to hit a gauge of 24 stitches by 32 rows in the lace pattern. The sizes on this pattern range from XXS up to 5XL. In terms of the finished sweater, this corresponds to bust measurements ranging from 99 to 173 centimeters. This pattern also comes in a couple of languages, being English, Danish, French, German, and Polish. The next sweater I'd like to discuss is also called the Peacock sweater, not by Knit, but by Spurt. This is a beautiful crew neck raglan all over lace sweater. It also has a little bit of a natural balloon sleeve and thin 1x1 ribbing. The suggested yarn for this pattern is Mayo Garn Pearl Mohair held with the Mayo Garn Tweed Supreme. So again, a fingering weight held with a lace to get to a DK weight gauge. The sweater is suggested to be knit on 4mm needles to hit a gauge of 21 stitches by 40 rows. The sizes on this pattern range from XS to XL. I'm assuming because this is a very small designer, so I hope if they gain a bit of traction and popularity, they will also gain the ability to increase the size range on their patterns. This pattern is translated to English and also comes in Norwegian. The last pattern I want to talk to you guys about today is actually also a bit of an honorable mention, and that is the Thalia sweater by Pearl by Ray. I follow her on Instagram and I have been following this design ever since she started designing it. It is currently not yet published. It is being tested right now, so it will soon be published, and you can count on me knitting this in the future because it is absolutely marvelous. This is one of the most beautiful designs I've ever seen. It has this cathedral-like lace stitch all over and these picot edges at the crew neck, at the cuff, at the hemline. It looks like it's a drop shoulder and like it's knit with a fingering held with a lace weight mohair, as most of these other patterns that I discussed are as well. I think it looks absolutely ethereal and fluffy, but again, I think with these patterns, you do not need to use a mohair or a lace weight. If you want to make it more summer proof, you could knit it with a fingering weight cotton merino or cotton held double, or with a DK weight cotton merino yarn, and it would look just as beautiful and lovely in my opinion. It's just a different look. Not less pretty, just different. those were all of the 25 lace knitting patterns that I wanted to talk to you about today. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite, or whether I missed any lace patterns that you think should have definitely made this list. I also love to hear what you were knitting on while you were watching this video, so feel free to drop that in a comment as well. Those are my favorite comments to get. Now there's nothing left for me to say except for I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.